Okay. So anyhow, now you know why I'm doing what I'm doing, but that being said, you can still take all of your tile don't have to look exactly like this, because we can take tab edit, like I said, we can grab some verts here in the middle if you want, and we can raise those, GZ, bring it up a little bit. We could even grab this one here if you want, bring that up a little. We can grab these if you want and slide them, GY, slide them out to here. You can raise them a little, GZ. You can sync these three if you want, GZ. You can create whatever type you want, you just can't touch the edges, right? And then once you're done, it's going to look smooth because we already smoothed it, and it doesn't matter, So if we go tab, we want to go GZ, come up, a little bit. Let's go GZ, come up a little bit more, and let's do this one in the middle here, GZ, a little bit here, and we'll come up a little bit more here. So we're creating more of a hill, tab, there we go. Looks smooth, you don't see the sharp edges. And now if you get down here, you can kind of see where the little points are, but you should be getting the idea by now. We can move these verts here, or X, and move them all the way out here next to these ones if we want, so whatever we want to do, as long as we just don't touch these outer edge ones, so they'll match up with the tile right next to it. So anyhow, this is our ground tile, basically what it's going to be. Let's go ahead and go back. If this is our ground tile, okay, you have two main meshes when you create a tile. You have the one which is your walk mesh that tells the game where the players can walk and can't walk. Okay, that's what we have right here. This is a walk mesh, and you go, because we created when we created our tile earlier in video 1. But if you go back here, you also know it's a walk mesh because of this reason right here. It's AABB is the type. That tells you it's a walk mesh. And then I also see another thing, we're not linked as a parent anymore on this for some reason. I don't know what I did. Copy. So select this, go to the parent. That'll link it to the parent. So let me go back so I can show you what I was talking about. If I grab my tile G and move it, the walk mesh isn't attached. To attach it, you got to select the parent. So the parent is the Aurora base, which is here, which is what I named. So I'm just going to highlight this, hit Control C, copy that, right? Then I'm going to click on the item that I want, which is this mesh, and I'm going to go to the parent, which is under the square, under parent, relationships parent, and then Control V, paste that. Okay, that now locks it in. If you see when I do the drop down, it's listed under there now. But I grab this and I go G, and it'll move, so it stays with the Aurora base. So this is going to be my Aurora base. This is my walk mesh. So if there's an area that this is all sand, that's why it's yellow. If I wanted to make, say, this area here, let's do 3. Screencast keys quit working. Not sure what happened. Okay. Now, if I click, say, this area here, and I want to make this non-walkable, right? Then I could go up and do obstructing, and if I set it to obstructing, that is going, it turns it to dark gray, which is the color, but it means no arrows can shoot through this, no spells can shoot through this. You can't see through this area. So if there's a big tall tree and something was behind it, you wouldn't be able to see it. That's what's telling the game. Or I can change it to, say, non-walk, and apply that, and that means I can't walk on it, but you can see through it and shoot through it. And the main reason for that being is, say maybe it's a, I don't know, a tall rock, but you want to be able to shoot over it. Or maybe it's a hole, maybe it's a hole in the ground, and therefore you can't walk in it, you'll fall down. So it says 100 feet deep, but you can shoot across it and see across it. And if you see somebody there or a creature sees you, they can run around it and they come get you. So that's that. Water is another one. You assign the water. That makes it non-walkable. Or no, it don't make it non-walkable. It makes it walkable, but it gives you the water effect and sound. Just like the yellow is sand, it gives you the sand effect or sound. But you can just go through here and play with these. Snow, so on and so on. But assign those. So that's your walk mesh. This is telling where players can walk and can't walk, and if they can, what the sound effects should be like for that area that they're walking on. Now we need the mesh. You can't see this in game. Now we need the mesh that you see in game, which has the ground texture, right? So I'm going to tab out of that, and I'm going to hit Shift, or not Shift A, my bad. I'm going to hit Shift, click on this, and hit Shift D to duplicate it. I'm going to hit a left click. Make sure my numbers didn't change, so it's right there. So if I hit G, you can see there's 2 now. I'll right click to snap it back in place. So that's the second. Now I need to get rid of all these walk mesh deal on this one, and I want to go to here. It's already tile. I want to change from AB to trim mesh, and then after trim mesh, I want to take shadows off because I don't like the shadows are all messed up in Neverwinter, so I don't use them. Take shadows off, and now it can have a texture added to this. And if you do G, you'll see it's no longer yellow because it don't have the sanded, because it's not a walk mesh anymore. It's now a trim mesh, so it's ready to apply a texture. Right click, snaps it back in place. I'll do so I want to create a texture, or set it up to be able to create a texture. We're going to do, say, sand. So sand, we'll do sand 01, and then go down here to base color. I'm going to hit to image texture, and then the envelope so I can find it. Where are we now? Blender, Tileset, textures, dark suns, one I'll use for now. Yeah, I got all kinds of crap on my computer. So there, applied that. So now that has been applied, so you know what? Let's let me get on this other mesh. This is the walk mesh. G, walk mesh, snap back. I'll hide that. H key hides it, and I'll just use this one here now. And I don't want that called Sand 01, so get rid of that. Okay, now I need to set the texture on this, but you can do it a couple of different ways. You can do okay, so if we go to, we got this selected. If we go to, yeah, maybe if I hit A, yeah, there it is. If I hit A, I can take and do, or not A, I'm at tab, then I can hit A, that'll select everything. I go to UV wrap, or UV unwrap. That'll unwrap this per se to UV editing, and now you'll see the sand texture over here because that's what I have applied. And basically unwrap the sand texture to this. I do a little cheap programs, what I like to use for most of my simpler text for this one. So I go to edit, and it's called UV mapping, which it's in one of my videos. It talks about how to get it and what it does. Click it on, hit box. That allows, or that takes and tile it for me, but if I go down here, it's set to 1. I want to set that to 5. And whoops, tab A, box, I want to set that to 5, and that just repeats it more often. and for some reason it's not showing. UV. Oh yeah, this is because I'm in this space here. Just go to there, that turns on the texture there. Okay. Now why I like this editing tool right here, or why I do, is because if I hit this and I want to tile it, say less, I can spread the texture out so it's more grainy, or I can hit it again and we'll do say 1 and it's more fine because it's repeated more. It's kind of hard to see with this light of a texture, but 5 is what I like to use for my sand, because this sand texture, if I'm not mistaken, is a 512 by 512 texture, and 5 basically, since this is 10 across, 5 basically means I want it to fill a 5 by 5, so it basically repeats the texture 4 times. So that's the whole point of why I choose that. But anyhow, that's a little tool that I love to use. But that allows you to texture your models and or your meshes, and how to tile them in one of 2 different ways. We'll get it done depending on what you got going on. A little more complex ones, you would have to say take this and maybe you needed to split it. You could do the seams, and then you have to mark the seams, and then once you mark the seams, it'll cut it along that line and unwrap it that way. But it's something you have to play around with. I got another video that talks more about that, so you might want to look into that, unwrapping. But for our purposes, that'll get your mesh textured. Now Alt H will then unhide the other one, so now I have both of these available to me. So this is my walk mesh. This is what you don't see in the game, but that's what tells where the characters can play or walk. And then you can see I have the walk mesh selected because you can see the mesh, the different meshes for the faces. And then you have, this is the texture for the sand. It's got the sand texture applied to it. Oh, gee. So this is what you see in game. Now this has to line up with the tile right next to it. If there's a little tiny gap anywhere, you'll be able to see right through the world. So it's very, very important, and these two really need to match up pretty good. Now we technically don't need this inner line frame for the walk mesh, because the walk mesh we're not seeing it. So it's okay if if the edges have a little seam in it, because you don't see that seam with the walk mesh. You only see it with the actual mesh that has the texture applied. So theoretically we could get rid of this inner border on the walk mesh, and it don't have to match 100%. But by matching 100%, that means you're walking right on that walk mesh, and therefore the sand. If they're not 100% on, say let's see GZ or Z, bring it up, say they're off, your character's going to be stepping right here on this yellow. So if this isn't lined up, you're going to be sunk into the sand. You're going to be walking, and your character's going to, your feet or whatever, depending on how high up, is going to be below the sand level, so, or ground level, or whatever you're using. So that's something to think about if you see that going on in the game. Or the opposite would be, GZ, drag it down, would be you're walking in the air and the sand level is so far below your feet. So by having to match up, you match totally with the land. Okay, that'll be all, and I'll see you guys at the next video.